Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. A trial court ruled last week that Republican state lawmakers violated the North Carolina Constitution when they passed a law over control of state elections. That case focused on a bill that was passed by Republican lawmakers after Democratic Governor Josh Stein won the 2024 election, but before he took office. WRAL state government reporter Will Dorne has been following the case, and he joins us now. Will, welcome back.
Thank you.
Will, last week, a trial court issued a ruling in a case over a law that sought to strip elections power from the governor. What did the law say? What did it do? And why was it passed when it was passed?
Yeah, so for as long as anyone knows here in North Carolina, the governor has always been in charge of elections. And that doesn't mean that the governor personally writes all of the election rules, but he appoints the people who do, and also the election board, the individuals who actually vote on things like where to put early voting sites or whether to conduct an investigation into a politician over something, has a majority of members of the governor's political party. And this law would have undone that and instead given control of the county and state election boards to the state auditor, who is now Republican Dave Bullock. And as you mentioned, this all came up just a couple of weeks after the election. It was clear that the legislature had been watching the election results to see who was going to win some of these races, and then came up with this plan once Josh Stein won the governor's race to take elections control away from the governor's office. And then, they saw, okay, well, we like Dave Bullock. He's very close with some Republican legislative leaders. They decided to put it under his control instead.
Of course, the legislature is run by Republicans. It's majority Republican in both the House and the Senate, and Stein is a Democrat. Now, Stein obviously took issue with this law, and he sued. What was his argument?
Exactly what the trial court said, that this was just a clearly unconstitutional move by the legislature. And the backstory here is this is not the first time that the legislature has tried to take away the governor's power over elections. They tried it multiple times under Roy Cooper, and those were all shot down as unconstitutional as well. Now, the exact method that they used was different this time. In the past, the legislature had tried to just give themselves power over the elections, and lawmakers thought that by giving it to another executive branch official like Dave Bullock, that they could get around some of those past rulings and have this one approved by the courts. But so far, at least at the trial court, they have lost.
So in detail, what did the trial court say when it issued its ruling?
Yeah, so when we have trials in North Carolina over constitutional issues like this, it's actually heard by 3 judges instead of just one. And this was a 2-1 ruling, and there were 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat on this panel. And it was a Republican and Democrat siding with Stein, saying that this was unconstitutional. And one of the other Republicans wrote a dissent saying that he would have allowed this to go into place. But the majority ruling, which notably was bipartisan here, we see so many rulings that are not, said that the state constitution is clear. Just the plain text says the governor is in charge of this. And Stein had argued that these are clearly not just executive branch functions, but specifically within the office of the governor. And the judges said, yes, we agree. And they pointed to not just the Constitution, but also plenty of recent court cases within the last decade where courts have found similar rulings that no, the governor is the person who needs to be carrying out these duties for the state.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about other efforts by the legislature to reduce executive power. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Will Doran about the battle for power over North Carolina elections. Will, this bill with the election changes, Senate Bill 382, it had some other provisions that weakened the power of other executive office holders. Tell us about those.
Yeah, this was a bill that we covered extensively back in December when the legislature passed it. It was very wide-ranging, did a million different little things, but lots of them were focused on taking away power from certain offices that all happened to have been won by Democrats in the 2024 elections. And critics called this a power grab at the time. Republican legislators acknowledged that they were taking away some of these powers, but said that it was just a necessary balancing act in state government that they wanted to enact based on the election results. And so, for instance, we saw things like new lieutenant governor Rachel Hunt, a Democrat, lost control over an energy policy committee that the lieutenant governor's office had run back when the lieutenant governor was a Republican. And the new Secretary of Schools, Mo Green, lost control over a school safety council that the Secretary of Schools had run back when that office was controlled by a Republican. But the biggest moves were to take powers away from Attorney General Jeff Jackson, and it really limits the power of the Attorney General's office, says that he is not allowed to say that anything the legislature does is unconstitutional. And that is a huge break from the past, because we've seen plenty of times in recent years under former Attorney General Josh Stein, former Attorney General Roy Cooper, they would fight with the legislature under Republican control and say, we don't think that they should do X, Y, and Z. For instance, they fought against some of our new abortion laws. They fought against voter ID laws, and that really angered Republican lawmakers who did not want the full force of the State Department of Justice coming against them in some of these lawsuits. And so they have banned the Attorney General's office under Jeff Jackson from doing that in the future. We've also seen some other proposals that haven't become law yet to also ban Jackson from suing the Trump administration over some executive orders. So there's clearly, efforts afoot to really kind of rein in the powers of the AG's office.
Now, over the years, the legislative branch has looked to take power from the governor's office. This isn't the first time. And it always hasn't been about Republican lawmakers against Democratic governors, right?
Exactly. When the court ruled that this recent elections board change was unconstitutional, one of the main things it cited was a case called McCrory v. Berger, which is named after two Republican politicians, former Governor Pat McCrory and Senate Leader Phil Berger. And this stems from a little over a decade ago when McCrory was the governor. The legislature gave itself the power over a lot of environmental kind of issues. This was right after the big coal ash spill that we had, if people remember that, up in the Dan River. And the legislature gave themselves control over some of the coal ash response. They gave them control over some fracking issues, the state's Mining and Energy Commission. And McCrory said, no, that power belongs to the governor's office. The legislature can write the laws, but the governor needs to be in charge of executing the laws. That's why it's called the executive branch. And he sued and won. And so that has kind of been the basis, at least in recent years, for deciding a lot of these power grab cases, because there have been a ton, and the legislature hasn't lost all of them. There have been some instances where the legislature has been allowed to go through with changes to state government and the power of the governor. But so far, the elections board is one that courts have said is just pretty clearly off limits.
On elections specifically, Republican lawmakers, as we mentioned before, have been looking at other ways to control elections. Tell us about those efforts.
Yeah, there are plenty of ways other than just taking away the governor's control over who sits on these boards and makes these decisions that the legislature can use to influence election law. For instance, they have banned the elections board from trying to settle lawsuits without the legislature's permission. And that relates back to a case in the 2020 elections when they extended the deadline for mail-in ballots to come in after the election due to slowdowns in the mail from the COVID pandemic. There have been other instances as well, changing rules for, the political parties' election observers who go to polling places, kind of empowering them to have more ability to conduct oversight of elections officials, things like that. Then just passing voter ID and things like that. So it's not just about, who gets to control or appoint these seats. The legislature obviously has the power to pass laws, and they've used that power to pass plenty of election laws in recent years.
Now, what happens next in the case with the ruling last week, the one over the governor's appointment powers? Will Republican lawmakers appeal?
Yes. They told us immediately that they would be filing an appeal of this case. State Auditor Dave Bullock has also criticized the ruling and said that he wants to appeal, that he is ready to go ahead and take over control of elections here in North Carolina. Josh Stein, however, will continue fighting to keep control of those elections, and he celebrated the judge's ruling, saying that voters elected him to carry out these duties, and that's what he plans to do.
Going to be very interesting to watch where this goes. Thanks, Will.
Thanks for having me.
That's WRAL State Government reporter Will Doran for his extensive coverage on election laws in North Carolina. Go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for your day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.